Welcome to Lesson 13. This is our introduction to writing and reading decimals. Our essential question is, how do I read and write decimals using tenths, using the tenths place? And here's our awesome picture of us when we went to the library. All right. Okay, so how do I read and write decimals in the tenths? Whole numbers can be broken down into parts. You can write part of a number using decimals. Part of a number. Part of a number. Where have I heard that before? Part of a number is also fractions. Okay, so decimals and fractions are very much alike. Okay, so it says this is one whole square. Here we go, one whole. We can represent this model in several ways. We can write one whole. We can write it as a decimal. Notice where the 1 is now. It's on the left side of the decimal. The left side of the decimal is where the wholes go. For example, if you had one whole dollar, $1 bill, that's my money sign. Here's your 1. Notice where it is. That $1 whole is on the left. This is where the cents are, or the parts of the dollar. We're going to look at that down here. This is the square split into 10 equal sections. We can represent this model in several ways. We can say 1/10. We can write it as a decimal. 0.1. That is the tenths place. That is the tenths place value right next to the decimal, right on the right-hand side of it. And we can write it as a fraction because we have 10 equal pieces and we have one of them. So 1/10 fraction is equivalent. These two are equivalent to each other. All right, let's practice. Okay, here are some tenths grids. Okay, every one of these grids is in 10 equal pieces. So we're going to write each one of them as a fraction and a decimal. Not too bad, not too hard. Here's 10 pieces. I have 1 shaded. That's 1/10. My equivalent decimal is 0.1. That is the tenths place. Tenths. Tenths. Boys and girls, it's very important that you learn how to say these decimals correctly. I even have some people that are like way into 5th grade decimals and they're still not being able to read the decimals correctly. So this is not 0.1. This is not 0.1. This is 0 and, when you hit the decimal, you say and, 0 and 1/10. Okay, so let's move on to this one. Oh, I almost wrote a 1. Now we have 2/10, which is equal to 0 and 2/10. By the way, why don't you grab paper and pencil? Why don't you pause the video right now? Grab yourself some paper and some pencil and make sure you're writing down what I'm writing down. You don't have to draw the grids, but you need to write it. Pause your video. Go grab some paper and pencil. All right, let's continue. So this one is 3/10, which is equal to 0.3. But again, we don't read it. If I said read that decimal, you would not say 0.3. You would say 0 and. What do you say? And. What do you say when you hit the decimal point? And. What do you say when you hit the decimal point? And. Okay, 0 and 3/10. All right, so what do we have here? 4/10, which is equal to 0 and 4/10. When I said and, I wrote the decimal. What do we have here? 5/10, which is equal to 0 and 5/10. 0 and 5/10. Okay, you should be picking up on the pattern. We have 6/10. And why don't you try to write the decimal before I write it? Try to write the decimal before I write it. That's your goal. Beat Miss Mendez. Beat Miss Mendez. 0 and 6/10. Ready? Beat Miss Mendez. Beat her, beat her, beat her, beat her, beat her, beat her, beat her. I'm going to do it faster than you. 7/10. 7/10 is equal. Write your decimal. 0 and 7/10. Sorry. All right. Ready? Beat me. What's the next one? 8/10 is equal to 0 and 8/10. 9/10 is equal to, beat it, beat me, write it. Beat me, 0 and 9/10. And, oh, well, something's happening here. We got 10/10. We got 10/10. Something special's going to have to happen here. Guess what's going to happen? Do you remember earlier I told you that when you had one whole dollar, it was on the left side of the decimal? Well, that's what's happened here. If you had 10/10, you'd have one whole dollar. So no longer is the one on the right side of the decimal, the one is now on the left side of the decimal. The one is now on the left side of the decimal. That's very important. It's not a part of 10 pieces anymore. It's a whole. The wholes go on the left side of the decimal. Real quick, I want you to look. I'm going to switch over to this slide. Here's our place value chart. Notice my decimal point. My tenths are on the right side, and my ones, tens, hundreds, like the regular numbers that you've learned forever, those are on the left side of the decimal. These are the wholes. These are where the wholes are. And this is where the parts are. Okay? All right. Now, what happens when you have wholes? So how do we write a decimal when it's more than one whole? More than one. So those are mixed numbers. Remember our mixed numbers? Our mixed numbers is when you have wholes and parts. Same with decimals. We can write a decimal that's equivalent to a mixed number. Okay? Mixed numbers are numbers with whole numbers and fractions. They can be represented as decimals. Here's your wholes, 2 wholes, circles shaded in, and 3/10 shaded in. All right, so we're going to practice. Okay, look at your model here. Okay, how many wholes do you have? You have 2 wholes. And you have, what fraction is this one down here? 1/10. We're going to write it as a fraction or a mixed number, and we're going to write it as a decimal. 2 and, my decimal goes when you say the and, 2 and 1/10. Let's try another one. 1 whole, 2 wholes, 3 wholes, right, so now, and 3 wholes, and what should our fraction be? Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do 6 tenths. All right, so we're going to write it as a mixed number. We're going to write it as a fraction. By the way, you're writing it on your paper before Miss Mendez gets a chance to write it. You're beating me. All right, so our mixed number is 3 and 6 tenths. Our equivalent decimal is 3 and, I put my decimal, 6 tenths. All right, let's do the last one. Okay. All right. Excuse the messiness. It's hard to draw. All right. So how many holes do we have? Well, we got to do our fraction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Alrighty, people. Let's write our mixed number in our decimal. How many holes do we have? We have 4 whole rectangles shaded in. And then what's our fraction? 9 tenths. What's our equivalent decimal? Our equivalent decimal, 4, and that's my decimal, 9 tenths. There you go. All right, it's time for you to practice. So the expectation is you have pencil and you have paper. And what you're going to do is first you are going to write these fractions as a decimal. Write fractions as decimals. You're writing each one of these as decimals. You can use your place value chart to help you. I would suggest you pausing the video and you're going to go ahead and write these as decimals and be ready to share them when we do our lesson. Pause the video, do your work. You have 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Then pause it here. And now you're going to write your mixed numbers as decimals. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, pause the video. Do your work. And I'll see you at class. And you're ready to go over your work.